What I want to tell you about is some of the aspects, environmental aspects, the principles of environmental construction that we are trying to follow in our city as well. And I'm going to share the brief presentation with you. So I hope that you can see my slides. So the main principles of intensive development and environmental principles when we're planning the Lviv development. To start talking about the environmental impact, we should remember what are the principles of the intensive development. In Lviv, for a couple of years ago, we have approved the integrated development concept that has been in the continuation of the post-Soviet tradition of the general plan development that has offered the intensive scenario, but not the extensive scenario, not building in the green fields or using the internal resources of the city to make it a little bit more dense, to improve the effectiveness of the usage of the squares. And I think that it's a very important moment because the intensive development scenario presupposes less expenses for the construction of the new infrastructures. It gives us more opportunities to save both territory and to preserve the territory with the recreation potential, most opportunities to preserve the agricultural lands as well. And I believe that it's a very important aspect that might not be fully evaluated and fully cherished in Ukraine. For example, in Germany, there's the law of the 30 hectares that can only 30 hectares can be developed in on a day, but the overall state policy should get them to reach the number of 30 hectares all over the country being constructed by day, the new lands being used. All of the other construction should be by using the internal resources of the cities. Why this model is good and beneficial for Lviv? Because the previous general plan, it presupposed the creation of a more car prioritized city. When the radius of the city is 4 or 5 kilometers, it's either we need to have a good underground or a very good light rail, or we have to create more roads and to actually develop more cars. And you know, there's never enough of roads, and for the traffic, a lot of investment, a lot of traffic jams. Have no idea why would we use that. A lot of gas pollution of the air. So what we have used against this model, we have introduced the model of intensive scenario, a compact one with a transportation aspect as well, because being a smaller city is the opportunity for us to avoid a lot of car movement. The new economy, so there's going to be the territory is going to engage some new expenses, and we're going to save some money additional. And the environmental aspect, because when we are intensively developing, we are impacting the environment less. And the most important moment for any kind of charts as for the development of the city is about being really small as a part of the environmental policies as well. In the same time, we know that there's important environmental aspects like developing the green carcass and the green corps of the city, especially from the north, where we have the fresh air going through the valleys to the city, building the green pathways, building the green lines. And I'm going to give you some examples about that, and we'll take your attention to that. And using the full potential where it's possible for building the internal sub-centers for the city. And this is going to be the integrated approach when we have the transport stations, when we have the developments and areas, when we have the green areas that will be combined into one approach and one thinking. And when we will have this final picture that will be quite clear for the non-professionals as well, you will see that in the visual ideas, you will see that in the graphs, we wanted to create this kind of visualization so that you would even see with your naked eye that you could see how the space would be developed and what would be the main axis, what would be the main squares, what would be the main areas and main elements.
Як основу, як каркас міста.
The one that's going to be making the backbone of the city. Compared to the general plan, that has been the general plan of 2010, and that's for the people who know, for the people who can identify and make difference from the different shades of colors, then that would be very hard to read and hard to comprehend what the ideas were built here. We are facing the new challenges right now for this intensive development. We need to think as a part of the territorial community when we have even more territory that we have to cope with now. So we need to deal with all of the irrigation systems. We need to think about, so right now the whole world is being trying to preserve the swamps and the culture of the swamps and building the swamps and getting them into the aquaculture there because this is the issues of the biodiversity and water management and the using the potential, the full capacities of the groundwaters. In Lviv, we have a unique systems when the Podillia station is meeting the Rostoche Valley, and this is unique corridor that is going through the city. And you can see that from the southeast to the western direction, we have to cherish it and we have to work with it. And this plan is following this pattern. Moreover, there are certain challenges and in the infrastructural level on the introducing of the European tracks, for example, which is very important for us as well. And we need to get that in harmony and in balance with our environmental elements and our environmental ideas, but not against it. When we're talking about taking not a lot of space, we have to be very small because it also impacts the environmental track and environmental ideas, we need to combine it with equality. We need to talk about how we're building the space of the city. Because history-wise, in Lviv, we've had the culture of building the city space was of really high quality, of a really high level. We do have the green parks, we do have greener streets. They are the lungs of the city because every street was like a park, and you have this really green courtyards. And you can see how you can see that from the satellite photo, that you can feel the quality and the coziness of the space. So those spaces that have been built in the 80s, we believe that they were not really good because it's not clear what the courtyard is, what the street is, what the inner space, what the outer space. I really love the quote from Colin Rowe when he has said that architecture can either be the space occupier, so basically occupying the space, or it can be the space definer, the main defining element of the space. And I believe that the architecture should be the space definer and it has to define and shape the space, but not to be placed inside of the space as an occupier. This place has been unformed and shaping as in this case. So that is why we're getting back to the notion of a street, of a greener street, of a comfort street, both on the scale and as there's going to be people-friendly street. And also we're thinking about creating these courtyards, the very cozy Lviv courtyards, and the new culture that is going to be built, that's going to be scalable, that is going to be building the streets in a new way, so on and so forth. This is the space that we want to avoid, that we do not want to see in Ukraine. So this is the photo that is made specifically. That is the photo from St. Petersburg. That is from Russia. That is something that we won't. So, it's not that we only want to avoid the Russian spies, but we don't want to have anything in common with our enemy and with our torturer. So it's also about the shapes of our development and how our city looks like. We do not want them to resemble Russian cities. We want them to look like this. Modest architecture may be very banal for an European eye, especially from the developed cities of the European Union, but for Ukrainian context, that's going to be quite fresh formats and quite interesting. Through the time of the war, we have introduced the new standards for the development and construction, and we're talking about the structuring of space, about being scalable in the heights that we're going to be building, trying to avoid the overdensity in the structures of this housing and in the security and environmental aspects. Especially when we're considering the environmental aspects, there was the decision by the executive committee and the standard that has been approved that we need to also consider the climate change adaptation. So first of all, providing additional greenery on the roofs, or presuppose additional rain sewages and the reservoirs for the usage of the rainwater in the housing complexes and using additional roofing. So we are creating the maximum of greenery of the territory of the buildings as well to fully avoid the open the open land that creates additional dust, and the more draining surfaces that we will create in our cities, the better that will be, because if there's no those available, then all of the rainwater with a lot of rains is going to get into the sewage system that is not able to work with that, or in the general city system that will not be able to handle that, and we might have additional catastrophe due to the water's level of the groundwaters as well. Plants, preserving as many plants as possible and as much greenery as possible, integrating it into the construction plans, creating additional park zones and greenery zones, and presuppose the deep zones for planting the trees for them to have enough space for rooting. Speaking on the standards and general approach and overall concept, but how it is implemented in practice. In practice, we have a lot of territories that will need to be rethought and reconsidered. For example, the territory in around the Zelena Street and Czerwona Kalena Street and Stus Street, where we have a lot of different territories there, and most of the buildings there, they are in a terrible state. And for this territory that has been used or has been really ad hoc constructed during the Soviet times, we need to reestablish it and to turn it into the comfortable environment of the city. Of course, we analyze the functions, what there might be. Can we like preserve the industrial functions? Where should we build the public functions or residential function in the city? But we also consider the green structures from the very different points of view. It might not be just the parks, it might be just like a greener territories or smaller gardens, for example, for the private houses or for the construction of the 60s that have had a lot of gardens, some additional diagonal movement that can be created there. And that will be in the final offer. We're going to be using that in the final development offer. And we really wanted this development to be using the boulevards and the streets and spaces to cross it over to build the general picture and to build the general structures of the city. And we're comparing it all with the development plans and constructions that we've had in the end of the 19th, the beginning of the 20th century that was comfortable for the city as well. So for us to be able to see that our modern offers and contemporary offers are comparable to those examples we're still being inspired by. The examples that have been built more than 100 years ago are very high quality urban environment that still works well, functions well, and that makes us feel good, that helps us with the clean air, where it's really nice to be moving. As a lot of projects, so each of the project is going to become the parts of a bigger structure, of a bigger picture, because the owners of the lands, there are lots of different owners of the land, but we have built the concept in a way so that we could move step by step. You know, the comfortable public space is something that has been at the core of our attention. We really wanted to create very comfortable and cozy environment inside of the city. So the square in front of the our main train station, that's how it looks like. But if you will take a look overall for the territory, then you will see that it is underused territory in front of the main train station. It's not being used effectively. And for us as a city council, we do believe that for this kind of territories, we need to build up and find a better scenario of how it can be used in more efficient way, how it can be built and created for the future. And then it will give us more opportunities to work with the potential stakeholders. We have a lot of those, and we will be able to work on them on the joint implementation.
Архітектура тут насправді
We
якби
have made
просто
those visualizations, and here the architecture is just giving you the general taste of it, but we know how the spaces could work, we know how this can be work, how scalable that can be. We have discussed the different options of water management just to combine all of the surfaces that might be created here. And this is how do we have the understanding of the general train station approach. So the right part of the train station has already been created, and the left part is something that can be created now. We're working with the existing quarters and with the possible participation here. The city has been divided into 6 big districts, but we want to work with micro communities, and micro communities have been divided specifically. Each of the micro communities, they have their own peculiarities. For example, for Resne 1, Resne 2, we have built the joint idea of a swamp park with the residents of these districts. We just wanted to have it as a combination between those two neighborhoods with numbers of boulevards that would connect them as the arteries that will be providing them additional water, additional fresh air, and of course would have a recreation potential there for the local population. We have been working with different sketching. We have been trying to show it to make it really good for the people. Sometimes we don't have enough time for the visualization, but sometimes this really fast sketching is really clear for the people and it will be easier to communicate our ideas to the people. We're continuing working with the public space and the water management. Of course, before the war, we have thoughts about creating some bigger public space with a good flexible potential. And, being like the central square of the city, we still have those sketches that we made for like the very big benches to be established for the public space. But right now, the city is mostly investing all of the money for the needs of the war, for the needs of the army, and we're not spending a lot of money for this kind of projects. But some of the modest elements, for example, we've had this territory that wasn't used, that has been under the so we've had what we've used very simple chairs and simple rocks. And now that there's the opportunity for the local popular residents to, for example, plant their own flowers, it's something that dramatically changes the whole understanding of this abandoned blob space. It actually costs nothing because, like, using some of the smaller stones, there with a nice, there's no need for the water supply system, but it has a huge impact of what the city looks like. The same thing about those smaller spaces. So we've had a big sports ground that has been taken down before the war, and later on it hasn't been financially supported for during the full-scale invasion, and the people were troubled by that. They asked to whether we can use those territories so they can use it, for example, with additional minimum investment into that. So we have created this approach to make it a volleyball playground or a smaller football ground, because before the war it was planned that there's going to be all in concrete, very posh and very expensive. But right now, again, so right now we've spent not a lot of money. We're given a bit of a skate parking zone, and there is additional draining surfaces with sand, with grass that works properly, that work very good, and they can be used on a daily basis. And it's a very good and important optimism and inspiration part for the people there. And we're not using the very expensive concrete stairs, we're using the wooden stairs here. And I know that this kind of a solutions can be seen in different cities, the one that have a lot of budget as well, like in Switzerland or in other countries, because that is a very good environmental friendly solution, and we don't have enough need for enough expenses to that. So we're planning that as well. Then, with the help of our sponsors, we were able to launch that this one of the central playgrounds, and we want to rethink all of our playgrounds to this type in the future, because the children, they need to collaborate and work with environmental friendly materials. So that would be wooden materials, and it has to be very creative and non-standard playgrounds that would then bring up the interest for the children as well, but not just uh, can be used with no creativity engaged. So those green routes that we wanted to create as well to develop the cycling infrastructure for the city for the 10 years ago. Um, my predecessor, Julian Chaplinsky, has started talking about the water resources in the city, and we wanted to have this idea to recover the Balchinsky Lake, and we have created the hydrotechnical research, feasibility research on that, so we have all of the bases needed to launch this project. Of course, that's definitely going to be a very expensive project. We can only start it after the war, but right now we have a lot of others objects that can be recovered with creating additional water elements here. For example, that has been a private development in private projects, and what they wanted to do, they wanted to use the surfaces, they wanted to use this small streams, and they've made it a pond. And this is once again used for storing the rainwater close to a newly created building. And I'm really happy that this kind of buildings, this kind of projects are being created. That's very important and valuable for the city. In the same time, another moment is about the issues of high quality development and high quality solutions that are offered by the construction businesses. They're being promoted on the competition. We have a lot of private competitions as well because there is a lot of private developing initiatives, and they're following what the city does. And city does a lot of architectural competitions. Couple of those, for example, this is the art school that is very nicely collaborating with the landscape, and there's a lot of environmental aspects that have been covered in this project. Then the general school that is now being constructed in Pinholosna with the developers that have been constructing residential quarters there. Here you can see that there is a chapel that has also been in competition, and a lot of other objects as well. So one of the hotels that has been recreated, rebuilt in the central part of the city and using the stone. We are really for using of the natural materials, tree, stone, and we are not promoting, or we do not believe that it's a good idea to use any kind of polymers or the one that may have additional impact for the environmental and that will require additional fossil resources for their production. Of course, in all of these projects and all of these projects, they're just elegant and they're nice, and all of the details matter in all of those projects. And we're really controlling that all of the projects would be following their main goals that have been outlined in the competition. We're even using these competitions to procure the main benches. We have improved our principles, the one that I've shown you throughout the war. We have a lot of internally displaced persons, and we had some attacks against the city, and we're recovering the infrastructural objects. Unfortunately, people are hurt as well. We have a lot of victims, and that is the saddest part of it because the buildings they can be rebuilt and people can never be returned. But the city of Lviv is now a big humanitarian hub and is safer than most of the cities in Ukraine. Unfortunately, we've had a very big wave of people coming to the city before, at the very beginning of the aggression in February 2022. We had also established couple of this container modular housing. Once again, we'll try to integrate them into the territory and into the terrain. We wanted to emphasize the environmental component of that, using the environmental friendly materials, and the communities have used those things very good. We made some concerts in the evenings. We've established the playgrounds, and we have tried to make those container cities environmental and very good. We're having the urban gardening there and all of the others projects. We also wanted to create the unbreakable mothers. That's as the Sulik architects have created the architectural solutions. That's what it looks like. It's very modest inside, but everything that is needed for the communities that are located there with newborns and with for the pregnant women, that's all is there. And we also have the situational zone. We try to have create a recreational zone for them. And we've started to use the construction rubbles. So there was a small lake that has been created there. So the park has been created by chance, but it happened that last week we have won the new European Bauhaus prize, and if I know, we have earned 30,000 euro that we're going to use for the needs of this zone and for the recreation of the zone. So that will be the park that's going to be continually developed, and that will be the main spaces and the parks that have been made there. That's the users of the space have created. So there was the lake that's with a very specific planting there with those additional approaches and entries, the sports ground. And you can see that the locals there are using this park, and this park is kind of a ode of usage of the harmony of the with of nature and combination of humanity and nature, because we're not above the nature but in synergy. with the nature. We have lots of wounded warriors, wounded army men and military men that have been working in the city and have been treated in the city. We have the Unbroken project here. That is a very important project for us. That's everything that we can offer as the city, as the community. That's a municipally based project on treating rehabilitation, both social and psychological, providing the housing and mm, additional offers, but at the same time, the arts therapy, sports therapy for the rehabilitation of people, for the people, so the people could start their new life here. You can see the main hospital, that would be the rehabilitational center. In the 3 months of last year, it has been rebuilt. We have built those bridges here for the connection. Now we can see that the people, they can be using the wheelchairs to move in between those buildings, and now that has been the facade that has been now rebuilt. So you can see that how it looks like. Inside of it, we have made a renovation. Those are the photos, those are not renders. Those spaces have been really actively used by the people, but the people do not like to be photographed, those people that have lost their limbs, and they're going through very hard moments of their life, and we're trying to be very sensitive to that as well. So this center is creating the Lviv project has created that, and there has been multiple projects here, partners here, the Red Cross here, the cities, the brotherly cities, Warsaw, Vilnius, Freiburg. IKEA has worked with the government of Germany that has supported us on this project, and there has been a lot of expensive equipment that has been provided to us with the sponsor support of the government of Germany. And we're working on developing the main compass of this hospital, developing the new elements. The most important accent here is the accessibility, the materials, and being environmental friendly. The new heart of this object is going to be creating this that by Shigeru Bana. So this is a fully wooden building. So it was like all wood by wood. And Shigeru Bana has been a couple of times with us. We worked with him together in Japan. But it's not that we're only building a wooden complex and it will work out. We are continuing to work with the ministries. We have a very good collaboration with the government, and we want to have those elements and in the right way. And in the same time, we have built 1,000 square meters of the CLT. So all of the coverage, all of that, all of the workshops for the additional prosthetics workshop. We are finalizing the internal decorations already. We try to do that as fast as possible because it's needed. We have already been expertised, and we have already launched the construction of the 2 floors on the more than 1,000 square meters. Also the wooden constructions on the cross-laminated timber, and we're going to be using that. So those are the timber panels. So we're scaling up this project, and we're going to scale up this technology of the wooden construction for our conditions. Also working with Japanese partners. This is another complex in Brüchowice near the city on the conservation and preservation of the environment. We're using all of the potential of the existing buildings. If you can stop from building more, please do not build. If you can reuse something, then please do reuse. That is one of the principles that we're following as well. If you can build something new, construct something new, you should only construct it if you're not able to use what has been created before. So this is the usage of our park for recreation, the new municipal residential buildings. We have won the competition, and the Drozdov's company together with the AVR, they are creating this complex. The residential complex is going to be built till 2025. And this is new street with all of the connections and the whole ecosystem, the unbroken ecosystem, because all of our steps and all of our ideas, all of our buildings are the part of the joint puzzle. So this is what we think about that. The issues of innovation is something that is constantly important for us. The environmental idea and the speed of construction that is following us all the time with everything that we do. We know that there is a lot of challenges that we have to cover for today. So this is the Belgian architect Date van Saveren. He's trying out the buildings that the person can build on their own, assemble, the one that our Japanese colleagues have assembled in Lviv. So right now we're using it as a smaller kindergarten because the overall kindergarten is being built to provide to cover the demand of the community that has been displaced to Lviv. But we're using all of those techniques and approaches. And we are definitely going to be sharing that when the Urban Forum, Lviv Urban Forum, has gathered more than 1,000 people. This is the main architect from Aarhus in Denmark, who's been sharing her experience of how to build both in sustainable and environmental way for what is the environmental and the sustainable development of the city, what that means. And today in June, we're going to be holding the Lviv Urban Forum again. And I would like to invite all of you here once again. This is the website, Lviv Urban Forum. So we're going to talk about the responsibility. You see the QR code here, so you can directly go